The second area is about strategy process. And if I link back to this one, here we've talked about the content of a strategy at any time can be built around these aims, resources and opportunities. But then the question is, how do you align these? How do you move from one strategy to another? How do you update that and implement it? So strategy process is all about those green arrows in the middle. And again, I want to introduce a very simple model that I've used for many years that I find suits my little framework for the world. And then explain a little bit more, make some links with reward, and then after the break, I'll ask you to come back and think, how does this work in your organization? Now, one part of the strategy process, represented by all these different circles linked together in some kind of system, is addressing the question, where are we now? What's going on? What do our customers want? What are our competitors like? What's happening in the environment? So try to understand what's going on in the world. And if you're positive about that, it's strategic analysis. If you're negative, it's what we call in the UK, and it's the same in Belgium, but navel gazing, staring at your belly button. Because you could spend 12 months a year doing analysis, but that's it. And then, what's the point of that? Okay, so that's one part of the process. Another part, represented by these arrows going off in lots of different directions, is addressing the question, where could we go? What are the possibilities? Let's get some fresh thinking, some new ideas. If you're positive about this, it's option formulation. What are our options? What are our choices? If you're negative about it, it's generating confusion. It's hard enough to be clear what our strategy is, and now we've got 15 different possibilities on the table. Now these, I think you can feel, have a rather different, they're not the same sort of thing. Here, you're talking about creativity processes, about opening up new ideas. Here, it's much more about integrating experts. We say confident values, what's going on that side? How are people responding to rewards? That would be part of understanding where are we now. This might be one part of this would be, what are some different possibilities? Could we have a completely variable approach, for example? But it feels different. What sort of things do you do in your organizations to create new strategic options? How does this happen in reality? Brainstorming, yeah. And how do you know it's brainstorming as opposed to having a conversation? And what's special about brainstorming? Yeah, so you're allowed to think out of the box. It's not, in a sense, there are no immediate rewards. There's no sort of psychic reward from being safe. In fact, the rewards are given to say, think up something crazy, but that's interesting. And then maybe from that we can pull out an idea. What else is important in brainstorming? Exactly. So again, analysis and critique is this thing where you're starting to close the arrows down. But if you really want to open them up, don't criticize things. Let people say all sorts of crazy ideas, and when you've got it out, then you can think, does it make sense? So here, we're entering a phase of not where could we go, but where do we want to go? And now you are criticizing, you are evaluating and assessing. So if you're positive about this, it's option selection. If you're a little bit cynical like me, it's often post-rationalizing. We already knew what we wanted to do, we pretended to look at some alternatives, and now we're back to, I know, we were right, this is just what's appropriate. Again, to my mind, this is quite a political process. We may draw up cash flows and work out NPVs and all the rest of it, But most chief executives I work with and most business heads, what do they do if the cash flows aren't best for their option? They create different cash flows that work better. Absolutely. I mean, they tend not to give up on, oh gosh, I was wrong. But most of us, if we're passionate about things, we fight quite hard in here. And I think a lot of what I've seen with big strategic decision making is about individuals really fighting for things they believe in for whatever reason, and then winning over others. And obviously this is one big part of change management is how do you get people to agree to that's the way forward. Now another part of the strategy process, even if we've decided what we want to do, where we want to go, we need to think what will help us get there. If you're positive about this, it is engineering coherent support. Now this is a critical role for the reward system, and one of the topics you're bringing up here. If you change the strategy, and you don't change the reward system, this could be quite confusing. This could be quite difficult, because we may decide we want to move to, I don't know, a much lower cost organization, or a much more customer-focused organization. But if the rewards don't align with that, I think a lot of the stuff here will actually guide people's day-to-day behavior. Now, rewards are only one part of this. Organization structure is something else you brought up. That's one piece. Information systems is another piece. What do you get information about? Stories. I think stories are a critical point here. What stories do people tell each other in the organization that clarifies what's good and bad? I remember working with a utility in the UK, sort of in electricity and moved into gas and water, where the old stories at the time of privatization were very, very different from the new stories when individual customers became more important. Because in the past, all the stories were about engineering success. It was all about the exciting, the really exciting stuff was, we got this incredibly complex thing to sort out, and we did a brilliant job. And there's this large company that needed X zillion kilowatt hours to be provided in this thing. We've got all these things to do, and we sorted it out. Gradually, the story started to shift towards retail customers and to satisfying problems, solving problems, this type of thing. So there are many elements here, but if you're negative about this, it feels like the rules are changing. Now again, if you're used to one compensation system or one reward system in terms of promotion, and then everything changes, that can feel like a betrayal. Feel as though that they've changed the rules and it's not fair. And finally, here, part of the strategy process is what do we do today? If you're positive, this is implementation. If you're negative, it's back to an endless run of firefighting, solving problems day to day. Now, again, let me start with this in the context of business strategy, overall business strategy. I've drawn this